The collective conscience is a common feature of most galactic species. Without such a development, most would have surely fallen into intra-species war, crippling themselves permanently, and would eventually be seen to by a conquering species, the resident planet being used for slave labor and resource extraction, until it was sucked dry of all things valuable, be they creatures or minerals. There were, of course, several notable exceptions to the rule. Several species had developed on worlds entirely void of predators, mostly eliminating the need for conquest between species, because there had never been a need for it against planet-born enemies. Others had jumped the gap of technological development, going from early information age tech to FTL travel, mostly by way of drifting space tech that would fall into orbit. However, humans, being the rugged species they are, survived through to becoming spacefaring despite either of these advantages. They had suffered through war that was bitter and destructive to their species, coming to within an inch of annihilation by different factions across the face of their blue and green planet. They were so geographically isolated from the rest of the galaxy that they had no hope of ever discovering technology. All they had to go on was broadcast transmissions that would occasionally come within reading distance of their solar system. For this reason, the emergent species was unquestionably a threat. Even other individualist species declared that, were the humans allowed progress towards the galactic core, they would be uncontrollable. A species that had suffered through terrible wars and had forged their own path into the galaxy would only be pacifiable for so long. And so the only way to ensure the collective existence of the rest of the galaxy was to crush the humans and cripple them for a long period of time, if not permanently. And so, a rather chore-like war was fought. No species incredibly willing to be the ones to step up and do the job. But the collective banded together and hopped from the early colonies of the Humans Union, destroying settlements on planets as they progressed towards the center of the Union, coming upon their home system. Make no mistake, the humans attempted a defense. Their urban cities were the most obviously armed and defended. But past a certain point, they were unable to withstand long-distance galactic weaponry, which they could not even retaliate against. Soon enough, the human population was reduced to ash and cinders, spread across the countryside. The galactic species which had firstly declared the war, retreated, allowing scavengers to pick over the bony remains of the once threatening species, and left. The war was a great deal unpopular at the home systems of the invading species. And so they had all lost large amounts of support, forcing them to withdraw and act innocent, leaving the system barren, save for the scavengers and the remnants of humans on their desolate planet. And so, with the most powerful species in the galaxy retreated, it became a minor point of observation to keep a somewhat observant ear towards Sol and other systems. A moment without care for too long, and the emergent threat would return, asking to be crushed. Hobbyists, primarily, were the ones listening to the scavengers, detailing every moment of the picking over of Earth, mostly for reasons of record-keeping. Attempts at reformation between the scattered groups of humans were observed, and either succeeded or were discovered by the scavengers. The foreign species often bragging over galactic communication channels of their triumph. The scavengers were not morally concerned by the destruction that had been done. They simply wondered aloud at the sheer wealth of the constructions and natural resources of the human planet as they casually exterminated the remaining groups of humans they would occasionally run across. Then, the scavengers went quieter, occasionally voicing their competition of the extermination of one group or another. But, in addition to this, they began recounting casualties. Yes, casualties. The smaller groups of the rugged individualists had been able to retaliate in such a way, they were actually able to kill or wound the scavengers on the ground, picking over the skeleton of their desolate planet. More and more ears tuned into the long-distance observation of the Terran engagement, listening to communications as the scavengers, largely unheard, encountered more and more resistance from the humans. Straying entirely from the norm, hardly any ever considered surrender or suicide once captured, almost all opting instead for resistance at any cost. The scavengers, nonetheless, insisted they had the situation under control, refusing any galactic assistance. And as more of the scavengers fell, their weapons began falling into human hands. The last transmission, received 3 Sol Terran cycles after the completion of the galactic invasion of Terra, spoke with little care about the possibility of the adoption of the scavengers' weapons into more destructive variants. After that, there was naught but silence from the Sol system. Human or scavenger. The galactic community once again panicked, this time with more conviction, sending a large fleet to once and for all ensure the destruction of the species. Arriving at Terra, the galactic species noticed that the once present scavenger ships had vanished from orbit without a trace. Pressing forward, massive landing parties combed the planet over, finding only small bands of humans, lacking armament, seemingly having regressed in technology. When questioned about what happened to the other members of their species, they remarked they had left. Slowly, the galactic community became aware of the fact that the humans had taken the scavenger technology, their ships, their knowledge, and had intentionally scattered themselves across the galaxy, looking for a new home. And quicker still, the galactic species realized that, now on equal footing, the humans would not be crushed or easily trampled underfoot. No, in the time to come, the species of the galactic community quickly realized that, in the past, coming upon some of the smaller settlements was little more than stepping on insects. Settlements armed to the teeth would not fall quite so easily. The humans had waged and won an insurgency, and now, had made the entire galaxy their battlefield. Author's note. A few months back, I wrote casualties. And then deleted my account, like a jackass. And eventually I had the urge to write some material for this subreddit again. I don't know if I caught anything good in my net. But, I hope it was at least tolerable, and not too John Doe, infallible, or generic for the subreddit. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description.